what we refer to as the public comment period. One of the, I think, greatest attributes of the ICER meetings, these public meetings, are the contributions of manufacturers, patient advocacy groups, and others who step forward to provide context, color, commentary on what is being discussed, and always do so in such a positive, in such a positive way. That is, that we're in some topics, right? This one may not be as difficult as others, but controversial issues are usually surfaced here and always handled with such a civil discourse. So I'm going to introduce, under normal circumstances, I would express my incredible gratitude for all the folks that have come. You traveled from far away, but today you're probably traveling from your kitchen or basement. I don't know where you're coming from, but we welcome you to this version of the Midwest CEPAC. So Yuri, you're our first panelist, and we welcome you. And I'll let you introduce yourself. You're obviously affiliated with Pear Therapeutics. If you have any additional conflicts of interest to add to what's already included on the screen, please do so before you start. You have about 5 minutes to talk for your remarks. So thank you very much for being with us today, Dr. Maravich.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate the time. And as Eric mentioned, I'm a full-time employee of Pear Therapeutics, no other conflicts to disclose. I'd like to thank ICER for the opportunity to provide public comments at today's meeting. For ICER focusing on prescription digital therapeutics, also called PDTs, given its emergence as a treatment modality, and thank the Midwest CEPAC for your time and attention. In particular, we share the collective commitment to data. In my brief statement, I'm going to summarize why Midwest CEPAC members should vote yes, Resedo provides a net health benefit, and high on the long-term value for money vote, as well as favorable votes on the other benefits and contextual considerations. I think, as was well highlighted earlier today, traditional treatment approaches of MAT/MOUD alone are not working. They are important, but they're not sufficient, and our health system is going backwards. Our health system needs to raise the bar on access and quality of evidence-based treatments. Inequity of payers, also not covering treatment for mental health, particularly addiction, persists. Resedo is the commercial version of the academic product TES. It is intended to be used with MAT/MOUD, not alone. Resedo is TES simply delivered on the prevailing technology of the time, and both products can be utilized in the patient's home and clinic. And I'm just going to show, I'm trying to share the slide just to show a quick exhibit. Thank you. So what I want to call your attention to here on the left is basically two examples of TES and Resedo, which have equivalent digital content adapted to their respective digital formats, the browser versus the downloaded app. And so you can really see how equivalent they are. So just as a little more background, both Resedo and TES deliver standardized, high quality and fidelity, evidence-based neurobehavioral treatment. So that's community reinforcement approach, which is an addiction-specific form of cognitive behavioral therapy, fluency training, and contingency management. Resedo's FDA label stipulates that contingency management may be delivered in-app or by clinic to facilitate tailoring at the clinician direction. Resedo is manufactured under good manufacturing practices, an FDA-compliant quality management system, to confirm the therapeutic delivers quality treatment that functions as intended and can be relied on by patients, clinicians, and payers. Said differently, the FDA has verified that Resedo and TES are equivalent, that fidelity was maintained with each subsequent version, and that Resedo has safety and effectiveness validated in the shared clinical trials. Thus, the products have been evaluated in multiple randomized clinical trials, as well as pre-post case series in which a homogeneity of positive results were demonstrated. Also important was that these studies were high quality and funded by the National Institute of Health's National Institute on Drug Abuse, the premier addiction research agency. Given the rigor and totality of evidence provided, we note our disagreement with ICER's appraisal of Reset's clinical evidence. We also note that ICER's appraisal is inconsistent with its methodology used for other non-drug modalities. For example, in a prior ICER report on the diabetes prevention program, many products did not distinguish between digital delivery format and blinding was not attempted, yet the products were granted a B+ rating. A further example is that ICER recently awarded a B+ rating for the evidence pertaining to supervised injection facilities for which no RCTs were available, no blinding was possible, and all evidence was based on observational studies focusing on harm reduction. As this is a new therapeutic modality, we understand that there can be different appraisals of clinical data quality. We therefore restate the totality of Reset-O's available evidence here. Reset-O has what no other OUD digital product evaluated or available has. It has the multiple RCTs, thus meeting a Class 1 level of evidence on the Oxford classification scale. Of note, the slide earlier presented omitted patient substance use, such as in the Marsh et al. Study, which was significant and one of the key endpoints across all studies, and multiple pharmacotherapies and multiple use scenarios included clinician substitution, which was a major aim across studies. The FDA market authorization, which independently validated the clinical content, in fact did review and base their clearance on both safety as well as effectiveness as required by Reset-O's special controls based on the studies shared. And then GMP quality manufacturing, which ensures the functioning and fidelity of the product version to version. I think it's important here also to highlight what was mentioned briefly earlier on, the real-world data demonstrating the safety, quality, and effectiveness, as well as cost savings in real-world patients. So the use of Reset-O in real-world demonstrating product use and outcomes in over 3,000 patients, as well as the actual healthcare utilization data demonstrating cost savings beyond the 3 months for a 6-month study and the pivotal trial length, which are all the reasons why Reset-O needs your yes vote on the net health benefit and a high long-term value for money vote and favorable votes on its other potential benefits. Thank you. Happy to take any questions about the clinical data as well as what PEAR does to engage patients.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yuri. We don't typically field questions from CEPAC members at this point, so my apologies that I'm not going to do that. But I do want to give Jeff an opportunity to respond to a couple, I think important comments you raised, and will certainly be part of the discussion, later regarding the quality of the evidence and the conclusions that the team came to. Jeff, if you don't mind.
Great, thanks, Eric. Can you hear me?
You can. It's crystal
good.
clear.
I changed. I heard the sound was different. I wasn't sure this new way would work. So I mostly wanted to address the prior diabetes prevention program digital app analysis. So I think there are two fundamental differences here. One, the predicate evidence. The DPP trial had over 1,000 patients, 98% complete follow-up at 3 years. Really unequivocal evidence that worked. The question was in different formats whether it worked, and there were at least 3 randomized trials. I didn't go back and count all the ones up of the implementations of the DPP that were looked at that had at least a year's follow-up. So I still think the evidence base was qualitatively different than what we're seeing here today. That was the main comment. I wasn't involved with the more recent ICER analysis, so I can't comment on that, but I just wanted to address the more relevant digital implementation of something with a really strong evidence base, the DPP.
Yeah. So we're gonna move, I think right now, through the magic of Zoom, where the next panelist is coming up. Hans, welcome to the meeting. We're thrilled to have you here. If you have any additional conflicts of interest to disclose, other than what appear on the screen, please let us know. But you have 5 minutes, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for being with us today.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, maybe still. I'm Hans Moorfield. I'm the CEO of Chess Health, and I had thoughtfully prepared some remarks that were well timed to 5 minutes. But I really want to spend the bulk of my time responding to some questions about patient-centered outcomes that were raised by Timothy Wilt, which are great questions. So first, of course, I want to express my thanks to ICER and this group for undertaking this work. We understand that we didn't have the OUD-specific randomized clinical trials, which really aligned with your evaluation. Our Connections app is the combination of 2 great evidence-based programs, HS, which is a smartphone app from the University of Wisconsin, and CBT for CBT, an excellent set of digital CBT programs developed by Kathy Carroll at Yale. They were the subject of 10 randomized clinical trials, or roughly. You've gotten or seen some of that evidence. But unfortunately, none of them sort of aligned perfectly, understandably, with what you were seeking. I will share that in January, we're going to be kicking off participation in a 4-year MAT study for OUD that will be, really well aligned with what your goals were. But what I wanted to do, so, being upfront about that, I wanted to address the question about patient-centered outcomes. And again, we were sort of summarized earlier as the Connections app being a combination of peer support plus CBT, and that, it's a fair, but, a fair summary, but there's a lot more to our platform. But I want to speak about the patients, about the peer support piece of that specifically, because this really touches upon patient-centered outcomes. When individuals get our app and open it up, one of the first things they notice and realize is that they've joined a safe online community of hundreds, if not a few thousand individuals who are also in treatment and recovery. We have different communities, that's why they're different sizes, where they can, engage with other people who are facing similar circumstances, talk about recovery, talk about skills, talk about life. And Chess moderates those discussion groups, and there are fantastic conversations and fantastic experiences that those people build upon and learn from. And the number one goal there is to address isolation, which is always an issue, which has been heightened during COVID. And so I can share with you, and it's anecdotal, but I thought, individuals were expressing some question about the patient experience and the outcomes. And the first comment is that people find an incredible community where they get a lot of real support. And that keeps them coming back into our app day in and day out. I'll share briefly that we lose 4.5% of patients never log in a second time. 30% of patients, 20% of patients don't use our app more than 30 days. We're always working to improve those numbers. But the 80% of patients who use our app more than 30 days and for which they get no payment, no reward, no contingency, use it on average for 4.5 months. And then there was the question today about what kinds of patients really use this app. Our 2 biggest implementations, and we have customers all across the United States, are in West Virginia and Oklahoma. We're statewide in both states. We serve a lot of rural individuals who are using the cheapest of Android phones, who have who struggle with bandwidth, but they find a great community and great support. And in that community, they take advantage of other aspects of the platform, including the fact that all their data and engagement and survey and recovery progress is fed back to their clinicians, who can use it for feedback-informed treatment. They get the benefit of the CBT modules developed by Kathy Carroll that keep them engaged, that they learn recovery skills on their own schedule, and they strengthen their motivation for recovery. So I'll just quickly look to see what other comments I wanted to share. I think again, we will be, and we understand the importance of, real clinical trials that measure this in a very precise and scientific way. We spend 99% of our time thinking about, these implementations in the real world. We look forward to sharing, those both the clinical trials results in the future that are more aligned with these goals. And if anyone's interested, I'd be happy offline to share more about our real world customer implementation experience. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Hans, and thanks for being with us today. And I think especially giving us the comments on the user profile, because that had certainly come up on the persistence. I think some of the persistent statistics that you shared with us, I think, are very much appreciated in follow-up to the presentation of data and the assumptions in the model that Melanie provided. Our next presenter, if this works, should be Heidi. I have lost a screen. Here we go. Heidi Hoffman. So Heidi, welcome to the Midwest CEPAC, and from wherever you are broadcasting today, we're glad to have you. We're glad to have you with us. So do you have control of the screen yet? Or do you, I don't see Heidi yet. Is she there?
Am I here?
Yes, you are there.
Okay.
Great. Well,
Hi,
welcome, Heidi. So if you don't have any additional conflicts of interest to disclose, there are none on the screen, please feel free to just begin.
thank you. My name's Heidi Hoffman. I'm from Nashua, New Hampshire. I was given Reset O at the perfect time in my recovery. Right at the beginning, you know, I went through my 28-day program, and then you leave there and, you know, you're supposed to do all of these things. But I got Reset O, and it helped me along because, you know, when you're new in recovery, you're scared, you don't know where to go, who to go to. Right from the get-go, it followed where
I think we, hey, Heidi. Heidi, can you hear me?
I was able to read it on my own because there's a lot of stigma with being an addict. You don't reach out. And I knew all of the things that I was doing on Reset O, my provider was also able to see it, and she could discuss it with me when I met with her. There's a lot of benefits to having this. For me, it was like having a therapist right in my pocket anytime I needed it. And when you're new in recovery, you don't reach out and you don't do all the right things. But having this in your hand at any time that you're struggling is a huge benefit for someone in early recovery. And it also teaches you how to go out there and make those connections. It's, for me, I didn't want it to stop. I didn't want it to leave my phone because I would reference back to it, because you go through different stages in your recovery and you need to relearn it and relearn it. But I never lose the knowledge that I received, but it's always nice to look back on it, and it gives you worksheets to work on. It was very important to me. And I think at the right time, you've got to get these addicts in early recovery, because there's things you're supposed to do. Even though you're on the MAT program, you still need to do other things. And it can be scary. But if you have that right there in your pocket, there's nothing to be scared of, because nobody knows what you're doing but you, and you're helping yourself. I can't thank Reset O enough, because it helped me so very much when you're lonely, you don't know what to do, who to ask, and then they call you, they check up on you. You can log your feelings, and then when you speak to your doctor, they can say, hey, it looks like every Monday you are struggling. So what happens to you on this day? It's so nice to know that it's all logged and it's all safe, and my doctor gets to see it right away. That was what was important to me, to know that my doctor could see it. And because sometimes you don't want to say things, they can look in your chart and they can go, oh yeah, there's something brewing here. What's going on? So that was really important for me, to know that it was right there with my doctor. I just can't thank Reset O enough for giving it to me. I really appreciate the product and the clinicians that you can talk to. It's just so wonderful to have. And it's hard to be in recovery, especially in the beginning. It's very isolating, but having that in your pocket gives you that extra courage that you need. And I guess with that, I'll close, but I can't say enough good things about it. I share it with everybody that I know in recovery, and they all want to know how to get it.
Right. Well,
Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi, for being with us and sharing your story and putting it into the context of, you know, the issues regarding, you know, the security in many ways, what I heard that it provided to you, and the courage that it probably gave you from time to time to stick with your recovery. We're all in, you know, recovery is forever, and so we're very much supporting you today, and are grateful for the contributions you've made to this meeting. And I'm just thrilled that this technology was an important part of your recovery plan. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's great. If it weren't COVID times, I'd give you a big hug right now, but I can't. There's a virtual hug coming your way.
And that was also important to have it during COVID.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for reminding us that level of isolation is even higher during these times.
It was absolutely amazing to have it.
That's great. I'm going to move to our next presenter, if things work correctly. Should be Dr. Barthwell. And so she should be coming up here on the screen shortly while we wait for her to begin. Just the same reminder, if there is any additional conflicts of interest to disclose, that you can do that at the beginning of your prepared remarks. So there's always a little bit of a lag, right? But Zoom has been wonderfully reliable today.
Hi.
There you are. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you.
We're thrilled to have you with us today. And the stage is yours in many ways. So please proceed. And when you start, we'll start the clock. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here, and good morning. I'm Andrea Barthwell. I'm a practicing physician certified in addiction medicine by ASAM. I've had over 40 years experience in treating opioid use disorder. I started my practice in the Robert Taylor Homes, part of the Chicago Housing Authority in Chicago, and I now practice in a frontier medicine practice where I do telemedicine for medication-assisted treatment throughout Wyoming, Western Washington, and Alaska, among other frontier states. I've administrative, policy, scientific, and drug approval experience. I've been on the FDA Drug Abuse Advisory Committee and was the Deputy Drug Czar for President Bush. And though I've had an interest in computer-assisted treatment and digital therapy since the 80s, I met with Chess when they were at University of Wisconsin. I've got no conflicts to disclose. I've listed my employers, but they're not in conflict with my comments today. I want to comment on the value of these digital health technologies as an adjunct to MAT, particularly Reset-O, the only app considered today that is supported by studies that have been funded by and done in conjunction with NIH clinicians and researchers. And to also note that the APA in a newly published study named Reset-O as the only one out of 619 opioid-related apps to meet all of its criteria for the app evaluation model. In particular, I want to explain why CEPAC should favorably vote on Reset-O's net health benefit, long-term value, and other benefits. The challenge in opioid use disorder treatment is a third of the patients are immediate responders, a third are somewhat responders, and a third seem not to be responders at all. But if you follow the Cable Horn data out of Australia, you know if you leave patients on medication-assisted treatment for as much as 5 years, you'll continue to recruit some into a non-opioid using state, a non-prescribed using state. So you have to, I want to note today in response to your comments, you have to know that there's something more than the medication that has to be prescribed. The FDA and SAMHSA define MAT as the use of medications in combination with counseling. Of course, one size does not fit all, and behavioral therapies, but the evidence shows that neither alone is sufficient. While medications can arrest withdrawal, behavioral therapy is needed to retain patients in treatment and retrain patients in recovery management. Most prescribers focus on medication management. Disease management in the area of OUD is much more challenging. Fewer than 10% of patients who receive medication-assisted treatment receive such care. Reset-O is designed to close the gap and is beneficial to both patients and providers so that patients can get their lives back. They help in the acquisition, practice, and application of recovery skills in order to manage the triad of withdrawal symptomatology, stress and cues, which precedes, as Nora Volkoff, the NIDA director says, and is predictive of return to use or relapse. The app serves as a consistent companion and support away from the provider. The patient can access the app in real time. It's valuable for patients who lack transportation. By using the app in these settings, these real world settings, the stigma of entering addiction treatment is reduced, and these qualities are even more relevant in the face of COVID-19 needs. I heard someone talk about the racial disparities, and I'll tell you, as an African-American woman who's practiced in this area, African-Americans get less treatment for pain, and they're more likely to be treated in methadone than in a physician's office, even though I wrote some of the seminal research that allowed the office-based opioid treatment to become a reality and Data 2000 to be passed in this country. We still receive less treatment in the physician's office. But if you've ever been on Black Twitter, you realize that at least African-Americans, I can't speak for Hispanics or Asians, you realize that at least African-Americans are very adept at technology. So don't let that be an impediment to thinking about whether we will use this technology if provided to us. According to the NIDA principles of treatment, a minimum of 3 months is needed for most individuals with OUD and SUD to significantly reduce or eliminate substance use. NIDA is the lead NIH agency supporting scientific research in this area. And as discussed this morning, their scientists designed, conducted, and supported these studies which demonstrate Reset-O's safety and effectiveness. The FDA approval was based on its decision to grant Reset-O clearance on data from these multi-sites that were unblinded, but they were controlled 12-week clinical trials. The FDA noted a statistically significant increase in retention for the patients who used Reset-O as compared to those who were in standard of care. As a result, the app met the FDA's high standards for safety and efficacy. OUD is responsible for, it's a leading cause of injury-related death in the United States and is responsible for overdose deaths of 128 people every day. We cannot continue to drag our feet in getting this product in the hands of people who need it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barthwell. We appreciate all the comments and all the care you provided to people through essentially, it sounds like a telehealth platform for a long period of time before there was a pandemic that forced everybody into this environment. So
it's become easier now as a result of the pandemic because
yeah, right. It's like all the resistance, much of the resistance has faded. Jeff, do you have anything you'd like to add to that, or Melanie, regarding any of the panelists' comments that we've heard so far?
Sure. I mean, there was one thing I would love to hear a little more from Heidi. It sounded like, having the availability of the app, even if she wasn't using it, was really powerful. And if she could comment on whether, my understanding is the app disappears after 12 weeks and whether she thought that she would have had additional benefit if she had access to the app, both for revisiting some of the lessons that she wanted a refresher on, and the communication aspect with her provider, which sounded particularly powerful.
That's great. We'll when we reconvene after the break, and I think we can loop her back in to answer that directly. We'll do that, Jeff. Thank you very much. So we have a scheduled break, not a long one. My guess is we're going to modify the time slightly. So I'm going to ask Steve or Maggie to let me know. Thank you, Steve, for popping back on.
Sure.
I'll let you, as our master of ceremonies, let us know when we should reconvene. It's probably just
apologies. We're gonna have to take it out of all of our own hides. Let's instead of a 20-minute break, we're gonna have a 5-minute break and reconvene at the top of the hour. So that at that point we'll be back on schedule with the deliberation and the policy roundtable. So we'll see everybody back in 5 minutes.
5 minutes, right? Just time to get a cup of coffee or another beverage. So thank you very much. We'll reconvene.